Now let us look at the functions of muscle spindle. I hope you have gone through the videos of muscle spindle introduction, where you're seeing it is a proprioceptor, that is, it is a sensory receptor. It is present in the skeletal muscle. It can know how much the muscle has stretched, correct? Now the functions of muscle spindle. Stretch reflex is one of them and muscle tone is the second one. Overall high level I will tell you now. Stretch reflex means how much the muscle has stretched. It will have the information, send it to the central nervous system, and it will prevent overstretch of the muscle. That is stretch reflex. Muscle tone means it will keep the muscles in partially contracted state. This will keep it ready for any movement. If muscle is always relaxed and suddenly you have to wake up and run, that you see a tiger, tone is the one that is going to help you, because it is already in partial contracted state. You will be able to run as soon as you see the tiger, right? So muscle spindle functions are under two headings: stretch reflex and muscle tone. Fine. Now let us see under stretch reflex what and all you have to understand. See, stretch reflex is also called as myotactic reflex. It's the quickest reflex, okay? It's also called myotactic reflex. It is one of the quickest reflexes. They are saying actually it is the quickest of all reflexes. You wouldn't even believe, right? The quickest of all reflexes in our body is actually the stretch reflex. It prevents overstretch. Like I told you already, it prevents overstretch of the muscle. See, how exactly it works? Whenever the muscle stretches, even the muscle spindle stretches. Okay. So the sensory neurons which are there in the muscle spindle, they send this kind of sensory information to the spinal cord. Now the spinal cord receives the information, and via the alpha motor neurons, it sends back information to the muscle, to the extrafusal fibers, and tells the muscles not to stretch anymore. Fine. Now look at this diagram, a very crude one. This is your muscle spindle. Okay, this is your muscle spindle, and from the muscle spindle is coming your sensory neuron. Sensory information. It is getting relayed at the dorsal root ganglion, going to the spinal cord processing the information, and via the alpha motor neuron present here. Alpha motor neuron. Do you want me to write here? Alpha motor neuron. Alpha motor neuron present here. It sends the efferent signal to the extrafusal fibers, which in turn are connected to the intrafusal or the muscle spindle. Fine. So if somebody asks you stretch reflex, you can draw the muscle spindle diagram and explain the nerve connections to the muscle spindle. You can also draw the spinal cord diagram and explain the stretch reflex, right? If you remember, the last time we have discussed the nerve supply to the muscle spindle, right? Now that will cover the stretch reflex. Under this, we have to understand what static response and dynamic response are. See, static response means the muscle spindle is always sending some information to the spinal cord. Like if it is stretching, right? At all times of stretching, it is sending information to spinal cord. So that is static response of the sensory neurons. Okay. Static response means that at all times when it is stretching, it is sending information to the spinal cord. However, dynamic response means it is sending information to the spinal cord only when the rate of stretch changes. So dynamic response will send information only when rate of stretch changes. Fine. So if somebody asks you about stretch reflex, you will have to write all this information. You can write the types of nerves, afferent, efferent, okay, the types of responses of the sensory, that is the static and the dynamic response, how exactly it goes to the spinal cord, how the alpha motor neurons respond, okay, and tell the extrafusal muscles not to stretch so much. It is the quickest of all the reflexes, the stretch reflex. Fine. Now let us move on to muscle tone. See, under muscle tone, you should know what exactly it is. Muscle tone means it is partial contracted state of the muscle. This is because it should keep you ready in case you want to run as soon as you see the tiger, for a quick, swift movement, you need to have muscle tone. Okay. Now, continuous discharge from the gamma motor neuron. Do you know where what is the gamma motor neuron? The A gamma, what you study, right? The motor neuron to the muscle spindle. Those will have continuous discharge. Even at the rest stage, there will be some discharge from the gamma motor neuron. Are you able to see? So, this continuous discharge from the gamma motor neuron will keep the muscle in partially contracted state to help you be ready to run, move, swift movement, quick movement, any kind of reflex action that you might need. Okay, so it keeps you ready. So when it comes to muscle spindle, the functions you're going to write under two headings: stretch reflex and muscle tone. Now let us cover